President Trump in the Axios HBO series that debuts this weekend.
Senate Judiciary Committee Chair Chuck Grassley says there is a debate among legal scholars as to whether birthright citizenship extends to the children of illegal immigrants. And GOP Senator Lindsey Graham said, quote, finally, a president willing to take on this absurd policy of birthright citizenship, though Graham also intimated that Congress might be the best vehicle to change the law. Meantime, immigration rights activists and Democrats blasted the president, and House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi called it an effort to divert attention from health care.
Fox's Trace Gallagher. The U.S. military says it has 2,000 more troops ready to send to the border with Mexico to stop the migrant caravans headed this way. That would bring the total of troops to 7,200. That's about one soldier for every person in the caravans. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham tells Fox News he spoke recently to the Mexican ambassador to the U.S.
We can work on fixing the triangle countries, make their lives better, and we can work together to secure both sides of the border. But you need to stop this caravan. I appreciate what you said to me, and keep working with Trump. I think he'll be a good ally.
It will take weeks or maybe months for the caravans to reach the U.S. A relative confirms the couple who plunged to their deaths at Yosemite National Park died while taking a selfie. And Dow futures are up 86 points after yesterday's rally. The Dow gained 431 points, or 1.8%. This is Fox News.
As a fellow nurse leader, Lou has been a supporter of nurses and nursing community. She serves as a mentor to most of us. Lou advocates for work safety environment, quality of care, and collaboration among healthcare providers. She is also compassionate and passionate in her goals to improve the overall healthcare of our island. As governor, I know she will apply her skills as a nurse leader to make life better for everyone. Ako po si Rose Grino, and I'm in with Lou and Josh.
I'm Leon Guerrero, and I approve this message.
Paid for by the committee to elect Leon Guerrero Tenorio, Tony Sanford, Treasurer.
Enjoy a world-class breakfast in historic Talafofo at Jeff's Pirates Cove. Serving as both a military dispensary, recreation, and rehab center for pilots after the war, Jeff's Pirates Cove offers a taste of local history while you start your day with a delicious omelet or steak and eggs. If you're on a budget, pick up one of Jeff's $8 breakfasts, all served up with endless coffee. For reservations and information, call 789-COVE. That's 789-2683. Start your day at Jeff's Pirates Cove. Open daily at 8 a.m. in historic Ipan, Talafofo.
A woman tells reporters a GOP activist offered her $20,000 to make accusations of sexual misconduct and workplace harassment against Robert Mueller. He's the special counsel in the Russia investigation. The Atlantic reported Tuesday the woman identified that man making the offer as Republican Jack Berkman. Mueller's turned the case over to the FBI to investigate. More calls for civility in politics, this time from former Vice President Joe Biden.
We have to recognize that we take responsibility as well. Our political opponents are not our enemies. They are our opponents. The press is not the enemy of the people. And before we are Democrats or Republicans or independents, we are Americans.
Mr. Biden at a rally for Democrats in Iowa. Many people have called for the president to tone down his rhetoric. Folks in California may soon be doing double takes as cars roll through the streets without drivers.
Tech company Waymo is receiving clearance to start testing driverless cars on California's public roads. It's the first company to get a crack at this in California, with a Google spin-off one regulatory approval to have cars travel on highways and streets without a backup driver. It's been happening in Arizona since last year. The plan is to mold that into a ride-hailing service for state residents by the end of this year. Waymo wants to start slow in California, testing driverless rides with employees first before launching a pilot program. Ken Duffy, Fox News.
And the Boston Globe reports 2 inmates at the federal prison in West Virginia, including Fotios Freddie Gaius, a West Springfield mafia hitman, are under investigation for the murder of the notorious gangster Whitey Bulger. I'm Carmen Roberts. This is Fox News.
As I look around, there are so many longtime Democrats, but it doesn't serve the good of our island or our Democratic Party when we don't embrace the will of our party. And that will was choosing Lou and Josh.
the people that have been forgotten. We will bring people helping people back. I'm banking on Lou and Josh.
I want to invite those Democrats, those Republicans that are sitting maybe on the sidelines. Well, I want to tell them that they have a home here with us.
Family is about more than who you are related to. It includes everyone. This election is coming down to one value and one value only: trust. Who will you trust to protect the people of Guam?
And I approve this ad.
Jeff's Pirates Cove, open daily at 8 a.m. and serving hot breakfast with endless coffee and a taste of history.
For over 30 years, Sanford Technology Group has been helping companies throughout Guam and Micronesia with their payroll, time and attendance, networking, and other information technology services. Our online integrated payroll and time and attendance solution provides the workforce management tools and expertise to make your business more efficient and employee-friendly. For more information, visit Sanford Technology at 335 South Marine Corps Drive or call us at 647-0220 to schedule a demo today.
Call the experts at Guam Hearing Doctors if you're worried about your hearing. The evaluation is simple and painless.
If you can dream uncommon design and unprecedented engineering, you define the 2018 Lexus. The boldly designed IS Sport Sedan's aggressive design stimulates the senses.
Advanced paddle shifting puts the exhilarating performance of the IS Sport Sedan at your fingertips. With deep, luxurious seating, the ES350 offers an ultimate level of comfort, while cutting-edge engineering delivers a thrilling drive.
Put yourself in a 2018 Lexus.
Now with special incentives.
At Atkins Kroll.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Sanford Technology Group, STG, delivering service that can't be beat.
What are the benefits of switching to the handset payment option with GTA? For starters, you can customize a plan that matches your budget and lowers your monthly payment. HPO lets you upgrade to the latest phones whenever you want. No more waiting for a contract to end to get that slimmer, faster smartphone. Because with HPO, there are no contracts. HPO lets you design a phone plan that suits you. So join the thousands who've already switched to HPO, the most customizable phone plan on island. Limited time offer. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's how we start Tall Tales every day. It's sort of like, in a sense, our opening prayer, because we place a lot of value on the United States Constitution and its amendments. I will spare you my scathing criticism of Mr. Justice Antonin Scalia and his inability to read the word militia today, and move into the Constitution a little bit more broadly. We have a Bill of Rights that guarantees, at least in theory, things to like an individual right to keep arms, the right of freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, freedom to petition the government for redress of grievances, etc. But I have to warn you that those things are under attack. And the attack is somewhat subtle in a sense that the attack is not with force of arms, but with language. And we often refer to that language as political correctness. And political correctness seems rather benign when we joke about it and say, well, you know, I was going to I was looking for the man who was rotting out the sewer. I thought he might be down in the manhole. But then I caught myself and I said, no, I can't say manhole. I have to say person hole, otherwise I would be accused of sexism, and that, you know, to say the word manhole would be politically incorrect. It would be talking like be like talking about we have a good industry here because we've got a lot of manpower. Can't say stuff like that anymore. So we joke about it and we think it's rather benign, but I'm here to kind of run up a warning flag that it's not so benign. And I've got something I want to read. As I was going through my website in preparation for this show, my website, in case you forgot where it is, frombob.blogspot.com, updating it, putting in some of the more recent stuff, I ran across something that I posted quite a while ago, or was going to post quite a while ago, but never did. And I think it would be timely to get into that right now. And what it is a column from an email service that I subscribe to called Right Wisconsin. And, of course, right is used in the sense that I would use it right here, right? If you're looking for some good conservative talk, you have come to the right place. So the guy who writes this column, his name's Wigderson, good Wisconsin name, and I still follow Wisconsin politics. I don't get there very often. I haven't lived there for 55 years, but I think it's an interesting laboratory to gauge American politics by. And without going into a lot of detail, I would say that when Scott Walker was able to get through a labor reform bill back in 2010, it may have begun the beginning of the Republican avalanche that swept Donald Trump into office. One of the things that happened was that those opposed to Scott Walker, the governor at that time, behaved terribly. They demonstrated at the state capitol. They made a mess of things. They got some unethical doctors who broadly advertised that if you need an excuse to skip work, come to me and I'll write one up for you, all this kind of stuff. And my sense was, from just watching from afar on TV, as did most of the people in the state, if you hadn't thought much about the issues up until that time, the way the people who were against Walker behaved themselves tended to drive people to him. So he survived a recall and was reelected. You know, he gave a shot at running for president. And using one of my sports analogies, I'd say he's a pretty good AAA ball player, but when he ran for president, he just couldn't hit major league pitching. Perhaps he should have hooked up with Jack Hattick back in those days, but I guess he didn't. So anyhow, that's the reason I follow Wisconsin politics. And this guy Wigderson writes some pretty good stuff. So this is what he says. And a couple of literary references here. Animal Farm and 1984, both by George Orwell. Animal Farm was a parody of socialism or communism. If you happen to read Animal Farm, the famous quote from Animal Farm was that all animals are equal, except some animals are more equal than others. So it really parodies socialism. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that it may be used in schools nowadays as serious literature as to the way a state ought to function. Anyhow, here's what Wigderson says. A couple years ago, my decidedly unpolitical son was assigned Animal Farm by George Orwell at his school. I'm not sure how the text slipped through the approved reading list. Kind of gave you my explanation, didn't I? Perhaps the English curriculum director for the school district thinks it's about veganism. We had great fun reading it together as I carefully explained to him who the characters represented and what the historical context was for the novel. The great irony of Animal Farm is that it was turned down at the time by the publishers who didn't want to upset the Soviet Union, Great Britain's ally during World War II. It wasn't published until late 1945. My son was in the school library the other day when he discovered a copy of 1984. Recognizing the author, my son thought that it would be an interesting book to tackle. And then he discovered the difference. After a few pages into it, he told me he had absolutely no idea what was going on. We discussed it, and I walked him through the beginning, and he's vowed to make a try of it. So what happened between Animal Farm and 1984? We can discuss the finer points and even how Big Zuckerberg is watching us through Facebook. For all of you Facebookers like me, who's coming to you on Facebook Live and also waiting for your calls when you dial 888-8255. But to me, the change between the two novels was the focus in 1984 of how ideas and even language were being eliminated by society, not just censored, complete with historical revisionism, but the idea, and Orwell called it newspeak, that some ideas would be removed from the English language so they couldn't even be spoken about. And we're going through something like that today on a variety of issues. Now you see why I bring this in here in the Second Amendment portion of the show. And we're going through something like that today on a variety of issues, but the most recent example is the National Rifle Association's ability to speak on issues. For example, Judge Rebecca Dallate, a candidate for state Supreme Court, has taken up the cause that no donation or endorsement by the NRA is acceptable in a Supreme Court race. But endorsements by her special interests are okay. It's not just a criticism of their political stance, but Dallate would actually deny them the opportunity to actually speak on the Supreme Court race if they had any hope of getting a fair hearing from her as a judge. Notice, she will not recuse herself from the cases regarding gun rights, despite her stated hostility towards them, but she expects her opponent to recuse himself if the NRA will not stay silent. Meanwhile, the, quote, 2 minutes of hate described by Orwell has been in evidence in every anti-gun march in recent days, demanding that the NRA become silent. It's not just a disagreement, it's a demand that the NRA loses its voice to defend rights that are in both the state and federal constitutions. This is the political campus atmosphere, college campus atmosphere now on a broader societal scale. If the left is successful with the NRA, nobody's right to free speech is safe. Maybe that's the reason I signed up for the NRA right after that kid David Hogg came out and became a media celebrity. But Wigderson makes a good point here, and so that nowadays, you know, if you were to say something as radical as my mother and father, when my mother and father were married back in 1938, that was the norm. Back in those days, men married women and women married men. To say something like that would now be seen as the mutterings of a heretic. And if anyone were so bold as to say, yeah, to me, marriage means a man and a woman, and that's it. So the word marriage, as we understand it, has almost been removed from the language. We have to kind of classify it, you know, same-sex marriage or something like that. The same way with the word sex. You know, we used to have males and females. And to say that, you know, to talk in terms of both sexes, nowadays, same thing. The A word that we've been talking about here in the context of election, as I understand it, you really shouldn't use the A word in polite company. So you should not, if you're discussing the phenomenon, or whatever you want to call it, you shouldn't refer to it as abortion. You shouldn't say that one candidate is pro-abortion and the other candidate is anti-abortion, because we're basically removing the word abortion from the language. I mean, the left is trying to do that, and now it's okay to talk about pro-life and pro-choice, but not pro-abortion and anti-abortion. So when we talk about the Second Amendment and how important it is that we stand up for the constitutional right to keep arms, as made known to us by Mr. Justice Antonin Scalia, we need to remember that we've got to do that with all of our constitutional rights, even at the risk of being characterized by lefties, and they're everywhere. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. Even at the risk of being characterized by lefties as not politically correct. So that's the Second Amendment portion of the program. I'm going to move on now to the place where the real Joe Cruz has the opportunity to shine, because no sooner do I get the words Zemi Ikotny out of my mouth, there's the real Joe playing the theme music from Meet the Press. And of course, as you so well know, we do an autopsy on the two editorials of our two papers every day. And I call it Zemi Ikotny, my tongue-in-cheek, backwards, multilingual play on words for Meet the Press. And ordinarily, I would use my blue pencil here. I give stars when I've discovered the better of the two, and I have occasionally given low grades like F's and zeros and things like that. So I'm going to start out here with today's Pacific Daily News. Not exactly hard-hitting. Our View, emphasize safety on Halloween night. Guam's roads can be a challenge on any day, but Halloween night is especially tricky for young ghosts, superheroes, and other costumed treat seekers. Now, before I go any further, full disclosure here, okay? For all of our international Facebook audience, today is Halloween. It is the 31st of October. But I want you to know that I am not wearing a mask. This is my real face. It may scare you, but if so, it's the same one that I wear every day. I know that if you've never tuned in before, you might say, wow, this guy on Tall Tales is wearing some kind of a mask, right, real Joe Cruz?
You look like one of those politician masks, like the Ronald Reagan one.
Okay, well, I'll take that, yeah. All right. Dark streets, rough roadsides, and motorists fueled by hard cider are some of the dangers faced during nighttime festivities. Flames from candles, lanterns, and pumpkins can also pose dangers, not to mention ghosts and goblins and vampires and whatever else might be out prowling around at night. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I suppose there's some common sense safety tips there. And the wrap-up is Halloween should be a fun day for everyone. Let's keep our community safe. All right. I don't think this is going to be grist for any lawyer's mill to file some kind of a libel suit against the Daily News for having such a provocative column. Then we move on to the Post, and the Post says Northern Mariana's residents inspire others with their resiliency. Saipan and Tinian residents' tough living conditions now and in the coming weeks and months can be daunting after Super Typhoon Yutu brought devastation to the two islands last week. We talk about the schools, rationed water, small group of residents banded together and used a chainsaw. Chainsaw. Am I back to the Daily News again? To remove a tree that blocked a road, allowing a fellow Saipan resident who had been trying to cut the tree with a machete to take his mother to the hospital for medical care. And there's a shout out for a guy named Gerard Van Gils, also known as G, who led an effort to clear a tree. And U.S. Army Ranger Joe Camacho and his wife Lydia, home was destroyed. The roof was ripped from the walls of their home. After the winds abated, one of the first things Camacho did was post the American flag to show, quote, our community that we will not be beaten by this storm. As the Daily Post covered the devastation on Saipan, the thing that was striking to our staff was the sense of calm. Many people are trying to cope with not a lot of materials left intact after the super typhoon. People patiently waited for their turn at the water refill station and food distribution centers. Even a family member who lost a loved one when a concrete slab fell on her tried to hold it together. We lost my auntie's youngest sister during the night. She got hurt. Concrete fell on her, said Luna Litulumar, of the death of her aunt, Felicidad Litulumar, 44. Luna Litulumar said it's been overwhelming and it's been crazy, but she held herself together, even describing how her brother's home provided a safe haven for her and other family members as the storm was passing through. And a couple more, and the end, they're a resilient people, but some help will make their recovery easier and possibly quicker. Okay, well, you know, sometimes I suspect that out there in our international listening audience, there are those who said that Tall Tales really kind of concentrates on controversy and the card fighting and things like that. Does Tall Tales ever herald good news? Well, I think this is probably some good news. It's a classic case of finding something good in a horrible tragedy. So for that reason, today, the Post gets the coveted Blue Star. Okay, so yeah, good timing, Real Joe Cruz. Just at the time I finished Demi. Coming up with the card next, and the first item on the card is, guess what? Lou Leon Guerrero versus Ray Tenorio. Make sure you stay tuned for that.
I'm John Gibson. This is My Word. These days, we're accustomed to seeing reports of White House dinners for foreign dignitaries that involve the finest dishes one could wish for in any five-star restaurant. So, why did Franklin Roosevelt's White House serve such famously terrible food? The answer? The Depression. Eleanor Roosevelt, the First Lady, was from a rich family. She'd never cooked anything. But Mrs. Roosevelt knew millions of American women who did cook were struggling with feeding their families. So she enlisted a woman to help her design meals that were nutritious and, well, cheap. Depression-era families had to skimp on food. The penny-stretching recipes Mrs. Roosevelt came up with were widely broadcast in newspapers and on radio. They helped mothers feed families on almost nothing. It didn't taste good. For instance, the president would be served a meal of deviled eggs with tomato sauce, mashed potatoes, and prune pudding, a 10-cent meal. When Ernest Hemingway came to the White House, he was startled to be served what he called rainwater soup and rubber squab. It may have tasted terrible, but the awful food was what got many families through the Depression. Just ask your great-grandmother. I'm John Gibson. That's my word.
As a nurse, I know it takes a special kind of person to do our job. You have to be compassionate, hardworking, and tough. You have to be a voice for those who cannot be a voice for themselves. And you have to do this every day without praise or acknowledgement. My friend Lou is a nurse, and she has all of these qualities. She will be a great governor, and I ask all of you to join me in voting for Lou and Joss. Ako po si Glynis Almonte. I'm in with Lou and Joss.
Paid for by the committee to elect Leon Guerrero Tenorio, Tony Sanford, Treasurer.
And now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So I got some new items on the card today. I've got Leon Guerrero versus Ray Tenorio, which is my recap of last night's debate. And, of course, I'm going to want to hear your recap also. I've got an item here, Trump versus birthright citizenship. Trump's latest initiative saying that he's going to abolish birthright citizenship with an executive order. So I have consulted with the constitutional law expert at the Tall Tales think tank, and I'm ready to wax eloquent on that subject. And then the next one is, I don't like to talk about myself, but the next one's about me. It's called Bob versus the CLTC. And then I've got a couple holdovers like BJ versus Governor Calvo, and the Post, PDN, and LG. The Post and the PDN versus Lou, Bota, and Frank. And I never did finish Chamorro versus Chamorro, did I, Real Joe Cruz?
No, sir.
Yeah, so I think we got a pretty good card here to fill up the rest of the time on today's show. So I'm going to start out with my recap of last night's debate. And after I do the recap, I'm going to tell you who I think won and why I think that person won. And I hope that you will contribute your own evaluations. And so, let's see, I'm looking for an evaluation from Ishmael Velez, Juanita Machi, Krista Valencia, Richard Leon, Enrico Blancafor, and whoever else joins the program now that we're wheels up and flying through the air here on Tall Tales. And remember, if you wanted to call Tall Tales, it's 858, as you were, 888-8255. And the area code, if you're calling from North American numbering plan, is 671. The international country code for the United States is 1. That would make it 1-671-888-8255. The easy way to remember it is 888-TALK. And, of course, we're here on Facebook Live, streaming Facebook Live. And I almost always incorporate your Facebook comments into my rap here. So whatever you put on Facebook may very well be broadcast to our international radio listening audience. So what I did was I combined the stories of the Post and the Daily News and to try to go through them together and see what conclusions we can draw. The Daily News starts out by saying allegations of conflicts of interest and racial bias drew loud responses from the crowd when gubernatorial candidates Tenorio and Leon Guerrero squared off during last night's great debate. At times it seemed like the candidates were talking about two different communities. Tenorio said the economy has grown, crimes have gone down, and $100 million worth of illegal drugs have been taken off the streets. Leon Guerrero painted a picture of an island that is in deep financial trouble, where people don't feel safe in their neighborhoods, and where it takes 3 months for a business to get an occupancy permit. So I guess it's one of those, is the glass half empty or is the glass half full, or one of those Trump-Leal pictures that if you look at it one way, it looks like a vase, and if you look at it another way, it looks like somebody's face. But I think there's something to be said for both of those positions. We do have serious problems, but the Calvo administration has made some progress, and I've commented on this before. To run from the second chair is a very difficult position, because when you're the lieutenant governor, whatever the administration that you were working in did that is meritorious, you're not going to get the credit for it. In the Calvo administration, any good thing that happened, credit goes to Governor Calvo. But anything bad that happened in that administration, you're going to get the blame for it. And when it comes to the bad things that the administration did, the lieutenant governor can't turn around and say, hey, not my fault. I didn't do it. The other guy did it. Can't do that. So it really hems in a candidate to run from the lieutenant governor's position. We have never had someone run from the lieutenant governor position and be elected as the governor. Joe Atta was lieutenant governor under Paul Calvo.
Yeah.
Yeah. But after Calvo's first term, Calvo ran for re-election with attorney Pete Paris, and he lost. So Joe Atta did not serve that second term, and when he ran from the legislature, not from the position of lieutenant governor. So that's one of the dynamics involved here. Now, there were some zingers that came up, and I'm going to see if I can find the zingers. Leon Guerrero asked Tenorio whether the people of Guam can take back the nearly $1 million in pay raises that the Attorney General said were illegal in 2014. You'll recall that what happened there was that the governor gave large retroactive raises to his cabinet and some others. The Attorney General, Liz Anderson, wrote an opinion and said, can't do that. It's against statutory law. So the governor said, well, we'll get everybody to pay the money back. And his idea of paying the money back was to cut another set of checks and then have the people that receive the pay raise endorse those checks and pay and give them back to the government. As though that would have fixed it. And of course, the governor got called on that very quickly. And so the wages stood. The Attorney General then came along and said, well, this is a crime and it should be prosecuted, but I can't prosecute it because I gave this opinion, so it would be unethical for me to prosecute it. We've got to hire a special prosecutor. And without going into the details, the hiring of the special prosecutor was fumbled so bad that as we sit here today, no one has ever been prosecuted. Although the prosecution would still lie, because although the statute of limitations for that particular crime was probably 3 years, we have a provision in our law that says that if a government employee commits official misconduct and other crimes while he's in office, the statute doesn't begin to run until that employee leaves office. So it would be an interesting question for either of the two attorneys general candidates. Do you plan on prosecuting the governor and others for those illegal pay raises? Anyhow, that was Leon Guerrero's question. Tenorio's answer was the administration operated within the law. The salary raise was based on an expert recommendation and approved by the legislature, and that the government must pay people well for work they do. Not exactly correct, Lieutenant Governor. He then attempted to return the volley by saying he asked why Bank of Guam didn't raise its employees' minimum wage when other banks did because of the federal tax reform. Josh Tenorio returned fire by saying when it was his turn, Tenorio asked Leon Guerrero whether she would pull all of the government of Guam money and business out of the Bank of Guam when she becomes governor. And, of course, that's an issue that's been before the public for quite some time. Leon Guerrero's bank does all of the banking for the government of Guam, millions of dollars. And, of course, the way the banking industry works, the more money that goes through your bank, the more loans you're able to make. And banks profit by making loans. So having all of that cash go through the bank is a significant advantage for the Bank of Guam. Leon Guerrero said that that will be up to the people of Guam. Bank of Guam is the people's bank. And as I said, I watched it on TV. Now, if you were at the field house, it's very possible that you could get different impressions of what went on than if you watched on TV. Because on TV, you get to see a close-up of the candidate's face as he's answering the question or she's attempting to answer the question. Fieldhouse, you don't get that level of detail. But when Lou was asked that question, she almost appeared to be stunned. And it took her a little while to get her answer out. And it was quite an answer. She said over and over again, it's up to the people of Guam because the Bank of Guam is the people's bank, and it helps the people, and it's helped the people providing houses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you would have thought, if you hadn't known better, that the Bank of Guam was a territorial bank, that it was actually the property of the Bank of the people of Guam, the way Lou was talking about it. And of course, that's not the case. But in short, it was a zinger of a question, and Lou didn't answer it any more than Ray answered the question about the illegal pay raises. Ray's comeback to that, to Lou's comment about the bank, don't you love it when somebody doesn't answer the question? Yes or no? Conflict of interest, Tenorio said. Leon Guerrero's running mate, Josh Tenorio, said Ray Tenorio had a conflict of interest when he signed the pay increase bill that the legislature sent to Adelup, which also raised the lieutenant governor's own salary. Well, actually, Josh kind of soft-pedaled that one because if you recall, I'll never forget this, on the 21st of November in 2014, Ray Tenorio called the legislature into special session because he was the acting governor at the time. And he called the legislature into special session. He sent this pay raise bill to the legislature that gave a lot of government officials hefty raises, including himself, the governor, and all of the senators. Senators got about a $25,000 raise out of it or more. And not only did they get a hefty raise, but the raise was retroactive back to almost the beginning of the year. So Ray called the legislature into special session. They went into special session. Judy Wanpat was the speaker. Although the statute says that you can't consider a bill without a public hearing unless the speaker certifies that it's some kind of emergency. I suppose it was an emergency. The senators really wanted the money. But Judy Wanpat didn't do that certificate, in about an hour, the legislature passed that bill without any amendments, engrossed it, and or enrolled it, and sent it right back to Ray Tenorio, and he signed it in the same day. The very same day. And Andrew Bainum has earned himself in the perhaps a nomination for the Poet Laureate of Guam when he named what Ray Tenorio and the Wonpat gang, which I refer to as the Wonpat Den, he said when they participated in the great salary smash and grab. So Josh kind of let Ray off. Of course, you know, there was a limit on the time of each person could speak, so maybe he didn't have time to get out all those gory details. That was on conflict of interest. Josh Tenorio said a Leon Guerrero administration would have, the paper says, an ethics commissioner. I think what Josh actually said was they would appoint members to the Ethics Commission. Josh also asked the Lieutenant Governor why he has not done all the things he's planning to do, such as building a new hospital, providing free college education as part of the administration that has been in the office for the last 8 years. And we go on to abortion, education, and government. Abortion, a frequent topic during the campaign, was brought up. Tenorio said he believes life begins at conception and opposes abortion, while Leon Guerrero believes that the woman has the right to decide for herself about her reproductive health. So we're back to George Orwell there. The woman's, it's not abortion. It's not about killing an unborn child. It's about the woman's reproductive health. When asked by a University of Guam student how her administration would support funding for education, Leanne Guerrero said she won't hold back on a $20 million in education allotment the way the current administration did. Then we go on to racial bias. When asked about a video where she is shown telling the crowd she's more qualified to be governor after saying she was born and raised on Guam, Leon Guerrero said the clip used in the Tenorio ad was taken out of context. Now, remember yesterday I was talking about gaffes and I didn't have my definition here? We'll come back to gaffes. Real Joe is telling me that I will commit my usual gaffe about Dave Brubeck's Take 5, because it's not really Dave Brubeck's Take 5, is it, Real Joe Cruz?
No, sir.
All right.
As I look around, there are so many longtime Democrats, but it doesn't serve the good of our island or our Democratic Party when we don't embrace the will of our party. And that will was choosing Lou and Josh.
The people that have been forgotten, we will bring people helping people back. I'm banking on Lou and Josh.
I want to invite those Democrats, those Republicans that are sitting maybe on the sidelines. Well, I want to tell them that they have a home here with us.
Family is about more than who you are related to. It includes everyone. This election is coming down to one value and one value only: trust. Who will you trust to protect the people of Guam?
I'm Leanne Guerrero, and I approve this ad.
So before I get into gas, I think I'll recognize some of the things that are going on here on Facebook. Jose Martinez has the antidote for political correctness when he says abortion is neither, quote, reproductive nor, quote, healthy. Just ask the dead baby. Then let's see, we had somebody else here. It's hard to follow all these Facebook comments with the way my machine deals with them. Yeah, one of the comments here was that, I think it was Jose Martinez that said that Josh Tenorio said that any matters dealing with banking, he would handle, any conflicts of interest like that, he would handle as lieutenant governor. And I know that that's what we hear from the Calvo administration, that if it's a matter dealing with health insurance, Ray Tenorio, the governor, will recuse himself, and Ray Tenorio will handle it. I don't know, the ability to write the right material like that might get you a job on one of these, on Saturday Night Live or something, writing comedy lines, because there aren't very many people that are naive enough to think that that could actually happen, that the lieutenant governor would do something against the financial interest of the governor when huge bucks like health insurance contracts or the banking contract for the government of Guam, that the lieutenant governor would go against the interest of the governor. I mean, maybe it could happen, but I don't know. It's a question that I think we all need to kind of mull over a little bit. So I had a couple other good, boy, I had a hard time. I'm having a hard time keeping track of these really good Facebook comments here. My bad. Richard Leon, Lou LG is the only qualified to lead Guam. Excuse me, other ethnics helped Guam grow and expand. Not Lou. Yeah, that goes back to gaffes. So maybe when during the big halftime show we always have at 5 o'clock, I'll be able to find what I'm looking for. But before I get into gaffes, I'm going to see what JR can add to the conversation. Hello, JR.
Hey, Bob. How you doing?
Good.
I'm kind of disappointed in you. At what point does cynicism and sarcasm start to, be defeating in terms of trying to build up our island and our democracy and all that we need to do to survive as an island and a people? I'm not a fan of the Calvo Tenorio administration at all. But, to just cavalierly say, oh, do you really believe the lieutenant governor would recuse himself and not, act in the interest of the people? How jaded is your thinking, Bob? You're a former public servant. Have you no faith or confidence at all in our democracy and our way of life? Are you like the Trump people and you just want to blow everything up? Or do you want to try and salvage what we have and build upon it and improve? I thought the bedrock of conservatism was a belief in our people and our country and our ability to reason and do the right thing.
Go on.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I asked you a question.
Okay, what is your question?
At what point does the cynicism and sarcasm and your apparent refusal to believe, as I said, I'm no fan of the Calvo Tenorio administration at all, but just to cavalierly throw out there like you do that do you really think, wink, wink, a lieutenant governor would act in the interest of the people instead of the governor that he's elected with? I mean, you're a former public servant. Do you really believe that we've fallen that far as a people, as an island, as a nation?
I'm not talking about people or islands or nations. I'm talking about a system that has a governor and a lieutenant governor. You're broadening it far beyond the...
And you're a former senator yourself. You really believe, did you act that way in office, Bob? Would you not have done the right thing if you had the opportunity?
As I said, I'm not talking...
Where do you come to believe that everything is just so terrible? And like I say, I mean, I have no use for the Calvo-Tenorio administration. But at what point do we stop as a people from just tearing everything down?
Do you want me to answer or not?
Well, sure. Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, well, it's easier if only one of us talks at a time. Now, my answer is this. I'm not talking about an island or a people or a nation. I'm talking about a system that has a governor and a lieutenant governor who basically share the same political destiny, and the risk that they would be able to separate their personal interest from the public interest. I think that the system is flawed, and I've commented on that before. My position would be I would do away with the lieutenant governor because I think it's a needless office. Now, if the sarcasm is troublesome, well, sometimes sarcasm is a way of making a point, and it's a...
Well, maybe, Bob, then, okay, then fine. If you believe the lieutenant governor's office should be done away with, maybe for the benefit of people who don't listen all the time, that you preface or end a statement like you made by saying, and that's one reason why I believe we should not have a lieutenant governor. Because to just casually throw out the way you did a few minutes ago, I mean, at what point do people just start to give up? We wonder why there's such voter apathy. You know, there is a role that the Fourth Estate plays, and you are a part of the Fourth Estate. You do have some responsibility as a broadcaster. Yes, your opinions, do everything you want. It's your show. But think about the impact of your words. And think about what happens when you throw things out like that. I'm glad I called so that you do explain. So Bob Klitzkie believes there should not be a lieutenant governor, and then we don't have to worry about recusal on conflicts of interest. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good to know. That's the full story, you know? Instead of giving us the Fox News version of it, you're giving us the full story, more akin to the New York Times, right?
The Fox News?
Yeah, that's the Fox News version. To me, that's the important. Like, when you make a statement like you did about the lieutenant governor, wink, wink, and not believing that he might be able to recuse himself, and you leave out something that's important that your belief is, or that the solution would be to do away with the lieutenant governor, you weren't going to say that unless I called. You were going to just assume that everyone knew that was your position.
And you prefer the New York?
No, that's your position.
You prefer the New York Times version?
I'm just saying that responsible news organizations, responsible broadcast hosts, responsible people on the media would give that other side, yes.
I thought I heard you say New York.
You know what? That was red meat for a dog. Sorry. We don't need to get into that, Bob. But you understand your role in what you do as a broadcaster and why it's important to maybe throw that out there and instead of just, you know, I heard someone on the other radio station yesterday say, we have no choices for governor. So she didn't think she was going to vote. There are 3 different candidate teams for governor. What are people looking for? No matter who your choice is, no matter who you support, there's 3 choices on an island of 160,000 people, an island of 55,000.
I got to shut you off, JR. It's time for the 5 o'clock break, JR. Sorry.
Okay. You take care, Mr. Klitzkie.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Another immigration issue before the midterms. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. President Trump's firing up the elections by targeting illegal immigrants again. He says he's going to sign an executive order to end birthright citizenship. That automatically is granted to children born in the U.S., no matter who their parents are.
Democrats accuse the president of manufacturing an issue in the final hours to deflect from what voters really care about, health care. In a statement, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi saying the president does not have the power to erase parts of the Constitution. Clearly, Republicans will do absolutely anything to divert attention away from their votes to take away Americans' health care. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham seemed to agree it would take a constitutional amendment and said he'd introduce legislation to do it.
Fox's John Roberts at the White House. House Speaker Paul Ryan also says the president cannot wipe away the right with an executive order. There may be more guns at the border to meet the migrant caravans than the U.S. had planned. The Associated Press reports the Border Patrol told Texas landowners along the border with Mexico to prepare for a possible influx of armed American civilians on their property who say they want to stop the immigrants as well. As President Trump visited the Tree of Life Synagogue yesterday, where a gunman murdered 11 people and injured 6, funerals got underway for 2 of the victims, with several NFL players paying their respect.
Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin, quarterback Ben Roethlisberger, and former defensive back Troy Polamalu were just some reps from the team at the funeral of Cecil and David Rosenthal, brothers to the Steelers' former community relations manager Michelle Rosenthal. The Pittsburgh Penguins also rallying around the victims of the Tree of Life shooting, honoring victims with a special patch on their uniforms, also donating $50,000 to the victims and their families.
Fox's Matt Napolitano. This is Fox News.
As a fellow nurse leader, Lou has been a supporter of nurses and nursing community. She serves as a mentor to most of us. Lou advocates for work safety environment, quality of care, and collaboration among healthcare providers. She is also compassionate and passionate in her goals to improve the overall healthcare of our island. As governor, I know she will apply her skills as a nurse leader to make life better for everyone. Ako po si Rose Grino, and I'm in with Lou and Josh.
I'm Leon Guerrero, and I approve this message.
Paid for by the committee to elect Leon Guerrero Tenorio, Tony Sanford, Treasurer.
The problem isn't just not being able to hear or understand, or having to tell people to speak louder. Sometimes the frustration is having to repeat yourself too many times, or speaking so loud you're almost shouting. At Guam Hearing Doctors, we understand that hearing problems affect both sides. One of our goals is to help your hearing for those around you. Call us at 989-TEST to learn more.
A former Chicago police officer convicted of murdering a black teenager heads back to court today, the first step in learning what his punishment will be.
Jason Van Dyke learned his fate October 5th.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Jason Van Dyke, guilty of second-degree murder.
And guilty of 16 counts of aggravated battery in the on-duty shooting death in 2014 of 17-year-old burglary suspect Laquan McDonald, who was high on PCP and armed with a knife. The trial judge hears arguments this morning here in Chicago before deciding how long Van Dyke will serve in prison, in the first time in 50 years that a Chicago cop was convicted of a shooting while on duty. In Chicago, Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
Indonesia's Navy says crews have spotted an object about 100 feet below the surface of the Java Sea that may be the fuselage of the doomed Lion Air jet. The Navy plans to use sonar to verify the object and then send down divers. Well, the spookiest day of the year is finally here.
This is Halloween. It's the one night a year you can live your best life as a T-Rex, King T'Challa, or pretty much anyone from Game of Thrones. How are we spending it? Well, spending is the operative word. Forbes reports we'll drop about $9 billion nationwide, about $87 a person. About 70% of us will be handing out candy. Half of us decorate, a little fewer than that will dress up.
Tanya J. Powers from Fox News. And the most popular costumes for kids are princess, superhero, Star Wars, and some witches. Then for adults, it's also witches, vampires, zombies, and one of the Avengers. Well, Halloween may give Red Sox fans an extra reason to party today. The city's honoring the World Series champs with a parade at 11 a.m. Eastern. No doubt there will be some other costumes there other than the baseball ones in the city today. I'm Carmen Roberts. This is Fox News.
As I look around, there are are so many longtime Democrats, but it doesn't serve the good of our island or our Democratic Party when we don't embrace the will of our party. And that will was choosing Lou and Josh.
The people that have been forgotten, we will bring people helping people back. I'm banking on Lou and Josh.
I want to invite those Democrats, those Republicans that are sitting maybe on the sidelines. Well, I want to tell them that they have a home here with us.
Family is about more than who you are related to. It includes everyone. This election is coming down to one value and one value only: trust. Who will you trust to protect the people of Guam?
And I approve this ad.
Jeff's Pirates Cove, open daily at 8 a.m., serving up hot breakfast with endless coffee and a taste of history.
What are the benefits of switching to the handset payment option with GTA? For starters, you can customize a plan that matches your budget and lowers your monthly payment. HPO lets you upgrade to the latest phones whenever you want. No more waiting for a contract to end to get that slimmer, faster smartphone. Because with HPO, there are no contracts. HPO lets you design a phone plan that suits you. So join the thousands who've already switched to HPO, the most customizable phone plan on island. Limited time offer. Terms and conditions apply.
Life's too short to be isolated from the people you love. Hearing loss is the invisible disability. The experts at Guam Hearing Doctors have solutions.
Enjoy a world-class breakfast in historic Talafofo at Jeff's Pirates Cove. Serving as both a military dispensary, recreation, and rehab center for pilots after the war, Jeff's Pirates Cove offers a taste of local history while you start your day with a delicious omelet or steak and eggs. If you're on a budget, pick up one of Jeff's $8 breakfasts, all served up with endless coffee. For reservations and information, call 789-COVE. That's 789-2683. Start your day at Jeff's Pirates Cove. Open daily at 8 a.m. in historic Ipan, Talafofo.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Sanford Technology Group, STG, delivering service that can't be beat.
As a nurse, I know it takes a special kind of person to do our job. You have to be compassionate, hardworking, and tough. You have to be a voice for those who cannot be a voice for themselves. And you have to do this every day without praise or acknowledgement. My friend Lou is a nurse, and she has all of these qualities. She will be a great governor, and I ask all of you to join me in voting for Lou and Joss. Ako po si Glynis Almonte. I'm in with Lou and Joss.
Paid for by the committee to elect Leon Guerrero Tenorio, Tony Sanford, Treasurer.
So here we are, finished up that great halftime show, and I'm glad to see that Brad Hewitt, all the way from Texas, was able to enjoy that big halftime show that we have every day at 5 o'clock. And when Brad said that he's watching us from Texas, Chris Abalencia suggests that Brad try to keep the caravan out. And I hope you can do that, Brad. Are you down on the border somewhere, or where are you exactly? And then we also had somebody else join just before halftime, Bert Sardoma Jr. So welcome aboard, Bert. So I was about to comment on the word gaffe when I entertained that phone call right before the big halftime show. So a guy named Michael Kinsley, who's a political commentary, said that A gaffe is when a politician tells the truth, some obvious truth he isn't supposed to say. And I brought that up in the context of what Lou said at her rally, which, of course, became an important part of the debate last night. And Lou said, I was born and raised here, Ray. My family is here, Ray. So I am more qualified to be governor of Guam. So the Republican Party, Lou said that she was taken out of context with respect to that rant that somebody caught on his phone and turned over to the Tenorio Ada campaign, which they promptly put on their website and circulated it around social media, got a lot of traction out of it. So I was about to say that one of the quick and easy responses when a politician makes a gaffe is to train yourself to say, well, I was taken out of context there. And whether or not you were taken out of context, that buys you a little time to figure out some way to try to distance yourself from the gaffe. And that's what Lou has tried to do with what I consider probably one of the major gaffes in the campaign, when she said that I was born and raised here, et cetera, et cetera. There's an awful lot of content there for people who weren't going to vote for Lou anyhow, and certainly for those who were undecided. And then the Republicans come back and say, in a statement, said it strongly condemns Leon Guerrero for comments in the video, which were, those comments. We call on the Democratic Party to reprimand their gubernatorial candidate. The Leon Guerrero's response is that the Tenorio Ada are desperate. In response, Leon Guerrero's campaign called the Republican accusations desperate and accused the ad for using her statement out of context. Ray Tenorio and his team are desperate and will grab at untruths and lies for their campaign. That's some pretty clever manipulating there. Use the words untruths and lies after you say that the statement was out of context. I don't think there's any way that one could say that Tenorio Ada were lying about anything when they used Lou's own words, in a sense, against her. I guess the only other... Oh, yeah, and then I've got one from the Post here. Pay raises for GovGuam employees, the lack of public transportation, concerns over environmental funding for the university were among the initial candidates asked of the candidates. Employees should be paid what they're worth, but it must be done legally, said Leon Guerrero, referring to the retroactive raises given to some GovGuam employees that the Attorney General ruled were illegal. Turning to Tenorio, Leon Guerrero asked, so Ray, my question is, can the people of Guam have that money back? And Ray said, we operated within the law. And he rejected the suggestion that the raises were illegal. Well, he handled it pretty well. Of course, what he said was not true, because they didn't operate within the law. And that's why the Attorney General said that what they had done was actually a crime. But it seemed to work pretty well in that context. And Tenorio went on to a long discourse about the Hayes study and using the word empirically studied, etc. So those were the zingers. I thought the hardest zingers were when Chris Barnett asked Lou about the I was born here remark. She seemed to be taken aback by that. And she was also taken aback by the question about, what about the Bank of Guam? And she had an answer for that. Well, it's the people's bank, so it's up to the people, and the Bank of Guam has done this, and the Bank of Guam has done that. She would have been better off, in my estimation, by saying, I can't answer that question, because her answer was, in a sense, just digging the hole a little bit deeper. The zingers that got Tenorio were about the pay raises, which, in a sense, he probably handled a little bit better than Lou handled her zingers. And of course, trying to deal from the position of lieutenant governor, where there were all kinds of criticisms over the administration that he served in, and many of them well taken, and he kind of fumbled through those. So, having watched on TV and studied the body language and the facial expressions of the whole thing, I'm prepared to rule as to who won the debate, but I haven't seen anybody on Facebook here tell me who you think won the debate. So should I give it a few minutes and come back to it, and that way you could tell me who you think won the debate? Or is the suspense so great that I need to come up with my ruling right now? Well, I'll tell you what, I'll go into the next item on the card, and then I'll come back, and and good call, Chris Abelitz. I'll come back and let you know how I rated the debate. So this is a story from today's paper. It's headlined, Lindsey Graham to introduce a bill ending birthright citizenship magnet for illegal immigration. President Donald Trump announced on Tuesday that he plans to draft an executive order to end birthright citizenship for children of illegal immigrants born in the United States. And this is what Trump told a reporter named Jonathan Swan. But now they're saying, I can do it with just an executive order. Now, how ridiculous. We are the only country in the world where a person comes in, has a baby, and the baby is essentially a citizen of the United States for 85 years with all of those benefits. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous and has to end. Senator Graham cheered Trump's move against birthright citizenship, citing it as a significant, quote, magnet for illegal immigration. Finally, a president willing to take on this absurd policy of birthright citizenship, Graham said in a statement. I've always supported comprehensive immigration reform and at the same time the elimination of birthright citizenship. Graham continued explaining that birthright citizenship is a foreign concept in most countries. Eliminating birthright citizenship would prevent children born of illegal aliens would not receive citizenship status and would likely deter the practice of foreigners having, quote, anchor babies, where immigrants plan to give birth to children on American soil to obtain citizenship for their children. The anchor baby population has skyrocketed in recent years. Our Congressional Budget Office study found that anchor baby population per year exceeds the number of American citizens' births from American citizens. So what that means is that what we're talking about here is people who are illegal aliens. They're not undocumented immigrants or some other euphemism. They are people who are not United States citizens and either stay in the United States after their visas have expired, or they enter the United States without a visa or any other permission, and have children. So although the parents would not be American citizens, the children, because they are born on American soil, are American citizens. That's what we mean by anchor babies. So Trump says that he can do away with that by an executive order. So once again, I have this handy little book here that I place a lot of faith in. It's called the United States Constitution. And I'm going to turn to the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And it says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Now, you American history buffs remember that the reason for the 14th Amendment was that the Civil War, the war between several northern states and 11 southern states, resulted in the elimination of slavery by the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment said no more slavery. So one of the things that may have been the precursors of the Civil War was a Supreme Court case, my favorite part of the government, right? A Supreme Court case called Dred Scott versus Sanford. Dred Scott was a slave who went into a free state and then came back to Missouri, a slave state, and made the argument that he was now free. And Justice Roger B. Taney wrote a decision saying it was actually a property rights decision, you know, kind of a Fifth Amendment due process. Also, you can't deprive people of their property without due process of law. If he had stopped there, he probably would have been right on the law as it existed in 1857. But he went farther than he needed to go, and he said that people of African descent were not citizens and could never be citizens. And that was one of the matches that, you know, kind of lit the tinder that started the Civil War. So in order to deal with that case, Dred Scott versus Sanford, the Constitution was amended to say that anybody born in the United States was a citizen of the United States in the state in which he was born. Now, at the time of the 14th Amendment in 1868, state citizenship meant a whole lot more than it does now. But that's what the 14th Amendment provided. Now, when Lindsey Graham says that we're the very few countries in the world do it the way we do, so that being born in the country makes you a citizen, he may have a point, because there are two basic theories, international theories of citizenship, but maybe I shouldn't say theories, I should say rules underlying citizenship. And as usual with lawyers, there are Latin words that describe each. There's jus sanguinis and jus soli. Jus sanguinis refers to citizenship of the blood, and jus soli, citizenship of the soil. So in a jus soli country, Japan is a jus soli country. You could go to Japan and have a child in the nicest hospital in Tokyo, and that child is not going to be a citizen of Japan. On the other hand, a pair of Japanese citizens living in Peru who give birth to a child, that child will be Japanese. He may be Peruvian too, but he'll also be Japanese. That's the difference between the two. So the United States is a jus soli jurisdiction. You have to be born in the United States to be a U.S. citizen. Now, I know the smart money over there is saying, well, yeah, my daughter and her husband had a baby in Japan, and he's an American citizen. And the answer is yes, but he's only an American citizen because we have statutory law on the books that says that baby is a U.S. citizen. It's not it's of a different nature. So we are a just solely nation. So with respect to Donald Trump saying, I'm going to do this by executive order, well, first of all, no, Donald, I don't think you can do it by executive order. Even the Supreme Court knows that it takes 5 people in black robes to amend the Constitution. Even the Supreme Court wouldn't say that you could amend the Constitution with an executive order. But here is the possible argument. Here's an argument that could be made. The 14th Amendment says, born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So who is subject to the jurisdiction of the United States? Now, the conventional interpretation of that statute is that the children of diplomats sent to the United States would not be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. And you know that from watching TV, that if a diplomat commits a crime in the United States, he's not subject to U.S. criminal law. That's part of your law and order notebook, right? And maybe even the diplomat's children. At the time the 14th Amendment was adopted, the argument was that that's what it meant, and it also meant members of Indian tribes. Because remember, Indian tribes are subordinate sovereigns under the American flag, but members of Indian tribes were not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. They were subject to the jurisdiction of their particular tribes. Now, if you were an originalist, that would probably be the construction that you would give to the phrase subject to the jurisdiction thereof. If you were a textualist, that is, that you only read the words, and you read the words for what they mean, you could make the argument that says, yeah, if you're in the United States illegally, you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. And then the other really interesting thing here is this. You take that part of the 14th Amendment, and then Section 5 of the 14th Amendment, which says the Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. So this same language appears in several other amendments, and it's interesting because it gives Congress the strongest power that it has, in a sense, a constitutional power. So if Congress can enforce the 14th Amendment that subject to the jurisdiction thereof by appropriate legislation, arguably the appropriate legislation would say that only children born of people legally in the United States become United States citizens. Now, I don't know if that would be a winner or a loser, but it is at least a colorable argument. So we're going to take a short break here. I don't think Jack Hattick suited up for today's game after those 2 great catches he made yesterday. Maybe he's taking a break. But we're going to have the 7th inning stretch anyhow, and then I'll come back and we're going to rule on who won the debate.
As I look around, there are so many longtime Democrats, but it doesn't serve the good of our island or our Democratic Party when we don't embrace the will of our party. And that will was choosing Lou and Josh.
The people that have been forgotten, we will bring people helping people back. I'm banking on Lou and Josh.
I want to invite those Democrats, those Republicans that are sitting maybe on the sidelines. Well, I want to tell them that they have a home here with us.
Family is about more than who you are related to. It includes everyone. This election is coming down to one value and one value only: trust. Who will you trust to protect
approve this ad.
That one's going for extra bases because Jack Haddock is not out there in right field to catch it. But okay, I see several people have weighed in here on who won the debate, and I'm ready to make my ruling. But apparently JR had so much fun the last time he called that he's back on the line again. So is that correct, JR?
Hello.
Yeah, did you have so much?
I believe it's Chuck, sir.
It's Chuck, not JR?
No, sir.
Oh. Okay, it looks like JR, but it's Chuck, huh? Chuck.
Yes, sir.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Great show.
Thank you, Chuck.
I just had a hypothetical situation, and I'd appreciate what you might think the outcome might be. If Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio does get elected, and it is before the inauguration date, and he is found guilty of whatever it might be that they might find him guilty of, would that, in your opinion, be cause for a re-election, or would that actually make Tony Atta the person that would be inaugurated? And I'll just hang up now and let you talk. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I'll come back to that after we go through the part here about the debate. Let's see, Daryl Taggarty said no one won the debate, neither the candidate or the people. No points made that haven't been made already. Daryl said that it wasn't a debate that could be won, and he didn't care much for the format. Maria Espinosa, I think Ray won over Lou. He had a commanding presence. He always responded to questions by standing in the center of the stage, unlike Lou, who stood behind the podium. Now there's a teachable moment for you, right? TV is it JR this time, or?
It's Jack, sir.
It's Jack. We just call him JR for.
I don't know. I think maybe there could be a system problem with what I'm typing here and what you're seeing.
Oh, okay. No matter what you type, it comes up JR.
Yeah, it's probably a refreshing kind of issue.
Okay, Jack, I'm going to get to you in just a second here. I want to go through these results here for a second. But the teachable moment there was that if you were watching it on television, when Ray strode to the center of the stage and spoke, it came across as more, in my opinion, more genuine than Lou standing behind the podium and speaking. Purely a subjective analysis, of course. Let's see, Liana J., Frank and Alicia won the debate last night. Okay, and then we had Richard Leone. Gun Grabber Tenorio won because he was a good talker, better than hysterical Lou LG. And Carl Bora Nelson said that he was late. He's late for the posse. So I guess we'll count him as not voting. Ishmael Velez, Ray won 2 rounds, and Frank won 1. Okay, so Ray and Frank. Jose Martinez, Joe Guam won. Good point, Elwin Quitano. So let's see. I think that's what I've got here as far as the debate is concerned. I will now give my evaluation, and I will give it on 2 different levels. One is presentation, and the other one was on content. Warning that it's, in a sense, impossible to completely separate the two. But on presentation, I think Ray Tenorio won hands down. I've seen a lot of, probably too much, of Ray Tenorio talking in public, but I don't know what he did or who his coach was, but it's the best I've ever seen him do. He handled himself quite well. Lou, on the other hand, if you were watching on TV, of course you got to see Lou close up. There was an awful lot of scowling and what I thought were off-putting facial expressions from someone who wants to be governor. It would not be a bad idea when you're on camera. I don't do it very often myself, but to kind of smile once in a while, right? But at least don't grimace when you're on camera. And that's kind of what I saw. I mentioned that Ray strolling to the center of the stage I thought was a masterstroke on his part. As far as tone of voice is concerned, once again, Ray hands down. Lou came across as pretty strident much of the time, almost in a kind of scolding tone of voice, which probably doesn't do very well for one who has political ambitions. Carl chimes in. For me, the one team that wasn't present won. Lou and Ray have both morally wounded themselves with self-inflicted wounds. I have issues with Frank, but he seems to be the least wounded one of the bunch so far. More to come in the last days, maybe. Gotta love politics. And Tom Poole, okay. Judge Ray and Lou are going to debate again tomorrow at lunch at my Rotary Club. If you come, I'll buy you lunch. Whoa. You know, get an offer like that. Who says there's no such thing as a free lunch? Real Joe Cruz? Okay, I'll see you there, Tom Poole. I can't remember which Rotary Club meets on Thursdays, but I'll take you up on that one. And then Rico Blancaflor says, so Ray was better at Bola Bola? Yeah, I think that's a reasonable conclusion, that much of public speaking and coming across in an acceptable fashion is Bola Bola. Much of it does revolve around technique, and technique-wise, I thought Ray had the best of the game. As far as content, I think Lou really flubbed the Bank of Guam answer. And I was surprised because one would have thought that had she prepared for anything, it would have been that question, because it's not an easy, there probably is a good answer for it. Once upon a time, she said that she would divest herself of all her interests in the Bank of Guam. But, you know, that kind of deer in the headlights look, and then a fumbling answer that really was a digging of the hole a little bit deeper, I don't think served her very well. Also, and this is probably going to will haunt her through the rest of the campaign, the I was born here, Ray, that part of it, she didn't handle that as well as she could either. I mentioned that she used the classic bump and grind. Bump, I was taken out of context and then tried to do something in another direction. So I would have to give it to, And taking a page from JR's book, I'm no Ray Tenorio lover, but judging from what I saw on television last night and nothing more, I would give the debate to Ray. Also, Ray did something that I thought was kind of clever. He kind of baited Lou by saying, well, I see Frank and Alicia in the audience here, something to the effect that they really should be on stage. So that's my post-mortem on it. Now I will be evaluated because I've got a caller on the line here who's going to tell me that I don't know Jack. Right, Jack?
Good evening, Bob.
Hi.
I know you've been speaking about the debate, but I want to touch on the subject that you mentioned earlier about birthright citizenship.
Okay.
Tie it in with our situation here. What is our citizenship? We're congressional citizens, right?
No, we have birthright citizenship.
Excuse me?
Yeah. If you're born in a place where the United States has jurisdiction, you have birthright citizenship. That's what the fight in American Samoa was about.
Yeah. Okay. And so my question would be, when you look at the qualifications for president, it has their natural born.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's not the same, is it?
The natural born means not a naturalized citizen of the United States. So people born on, if you were born here after 1950, Jack, you could be president of the United States. You might not be able to vote for yourself, but you could be president.
In my civics test, it said that we wouldn't be able to qualify to run for president because we're not natural born.
Who said that?
Yeah.
Who?
That civics test, 1980 or something like that, 1970.
Yeah, well, that's wrong. You would be qualified. You would be qualified, even though you couldn't vote for yourself.
Well, no, because you know how these past elections they're questioning the birth of the candidate for president, like from Ted Cruz to Obama, to Romney. And the problems with it, the difference between those is that their parents were U.S. citizens, but as pertaining to the territories and like the Commonwealth of Saipan and the Virgin Islands, the way that it was taught to me is that we were congressional citizens. We're a step above naturalized citizens, but we're not natural-born citizens.
Well, I've got strong authority to back up my position, Jack.
It's that paper from Harvard, right?
Back in the days when I was teaching school, I had I can't remember her name, who asked that same question. And let's see, Nicholas Katzenbach was the Attorney General of the United States. And I said, well, why don't we write a letter to Nicholas Katzenbach and ask him? And she did. And and she got an answer back. And he said yes. Okay, but more important than that, if you hunt around with the Congressional Research Service, the Congressional Research Service has answered that question in the affirmative.
Okay, yeah, just clarifying, because I remember also that at one time it was suggested that Arnold Schwarzenegger would run for president, and they completely blackballed that because he was a naturalized citizen. He wasn't a naturally born citizen. So
yeah, Arnold couldn't run for president. But that same question.
So it's just I just wanted to touch a little bit on that and see if my memory was correct or my teaching was wrong, and I'm glad to be corrected because the way I understood it and the way that it's taught to me was that we were congressional citizens, that our citizenships could be taken away. Unlike like those born in the States, ours can be taken away.
No, it can't, Jack.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
No.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, I didn't have time to watch the debate. I think it was a waste of my time. Like I said, it would have been better if the potential candidates were there to debate. So the three governors. I don't see. I mean, if the question for a lieutenant governor is, do you stamp the seal with your left hand or stamp the seal with your right hand? Do you prefer your documents collated or uncollated? And then get off the stage and let the potential governors answer the questions. I don't like this idea. I don't know who came up with this formats of debates. It makes no sense because whoever does win, it's the governor that's calling the shots. It's the governor that signs the bills. It's the governor that does the authority. So I really don't. I don't understand this idea of how these debates are run here. It just baffles me.
Okay, Jack.
I hope in the long run that maybe next election they'll fine tune it and just have the candidates, the governors, debate each other, and throw in a softball question for a lieutenant governor here and there, and then just get them off the stage and let the ones that will be holding the office answer the questions.
Okay, Jack. Thanks for calling.
All right.
So, the ever-popular Jack. So, I think we're pretty much finished with the debate from last night. And another call? Okay. I guess the call screener's not working at all because I don't see that one either. Hello. This is Bob.
Hi, Bob. This is Michael.
How you doing, Michael?
Good. I am sorry, but I need to disagree with you. I think Jack is correct. On Guam, we are not a 14th Amendment citizens. We are a statutory. The 14th Amendment says...
You don't listen very often, do you?
What's that?
You don't listen to Tall Tales very often, do you?
I do. Why?
Well, because we've kind of plowed this ground on more than one occasion before, but go ahead, Michael. I know about the 14th Amendment and the first sentence of the 14th Amendment, but go on.
And there's a difference between incorporated and unincorporated territories. Michael Israel, quick.
Yeah.
There's a difference between incorporated and unincorporated, and this is why the American Samoa, they are not U.S. citizens, because the statute was never extended to them. If it wasn't for the Organic Act of Guam, which specifies anybody born after 1950 on Guam are U.S. citizens. Now, a person from Guam who received their citizenship by the Organic Act is a natural-born citizen, so they can run for president. And that question was raised with Barack Obama because, of course, he was born in Hawaii, but Hawaii was even a full-blown state at the time he was born. So that was really a non-question. So we are, I agree with Jack. We are statutory, but we are at the same time natural-born because when we were born, we were automatically a citizen by statute. We didn't have to become naturalized like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Go ahead.
So no, I was just saying that we need to draw a distinction between the unincorporated and incorporated territories. We're an unincorporated territory, which means there's no plans to make us part of the United States in the near future. That's how the one insular cases got around the issue of how can people born in territories be part of the 14th Amendment citizens, and because the problem was that there were a lot of territories in America with a lot of Americans being born in it, and the 14th Amendment unfortunately says the United States, as in, there's a question as to is it just the states, especially when it continues on and talks about she'll be a resident of the state they're in. Well, there's no states, so they're not a resident of a state.
That's what it says.
So I happen to think the insular cases weren't too well thought through either, but I think he was just trying to incorporate. But they did draw the line on unincorporated or not. Otherwise, people born in the Philippines would have all been American citizens.
Well, you need to read Balzac versus Puerto Rico, and then a 1904 case, the name of which I can't remember right now. You're kind of in the right church, Michael, but I don't think you're exactly in the right pew. But I appreciate the call. I got heading down the home stretch here, so I'm going to have to let you go. But thanks for calling.
All right. Thank you.
"30 years ago, I moved to Guam from the Philippines to make a better life for my family. I worked hard every day. We struggled, but I was happy to do it for my kids. I will do anything to protect my family, but I don't feel safe. I don't see police patrolling the villages like I used to. Guam is not the same. Criminals are getting braver because they know we don't have enough police officers. The Lieutenant Governor says public safety is a priority. He's been in the office for 8 years and had the chance to do something to make us safer, but he didn't. I'm tired of empty promises. I want someone who's going to get the job done. That's why I'm voting for Lou and Joss. Sa Nobyembre 6, ako po ay boboto para kay Lou at Joss. At inaanyahan ko po kayong lahat na maniwala na mayroon tayong karapatan na maramdaman na ligtas ang pagboto sa kanila. Ako po si Bobby Gopez. Maraming salamat po."
I'm Lilian Guerrero, and I approve this ad.
Paid for by the committees to elect Leon Guerrero Tenorio, Tony Sanford, Treasurer.
So here we are heading down the home stretch on Tall Tales. Elwin tells me that with respect to the last call, we've gone through this subject many times over, and indeed we have, Elwin. And that's why I asked Michael if he didn't listen very often, because we have really plowed that ground quite often. And as a matter of fact, on Monday, we spent a lot of time with the Insular case, Downs versus Bidwell. And my rebuttal to the Daily News editorial, and the reason that I thought it was so necessary for me to get something in print rebutting this ridiculous statement about alien races and the Constitution, because these myths are so widespread and repeated so often that people think that there's actually some validity to them. So I also have to take into consideration that there are people who have not been fortunate enough to tune into Tall Tales. And by the way, you could help out by hitting that share button when you're looking at your Facebook screen here to get as many of your friends into the tent as possible. But sometimes I have to go over the same things more than once because it's hard to know who has been exposed to what, and I have to kind of proceed on the basis that many people have not been fortunate enough to be regular listeners to Tall Tales. And I see it as really important to get the real story out on many of these constitutional issues, the second-class citizen myth and the statutory versus constitutional citizen myth. You know, according to Michael's reading, even Abraham Lincoln was a statutory citizen because he was born before the 14th Amendment. But I guess that's where the skill in being a talk show host comes in. And I suppose it would help if I did kind of screen the calls a little bit so that when someone calls and on a subject that and wants to discuss something other than where the show is going at that particular time, I might have to ask the real Joe Cruz to ask the person to call back later on. because I hear what you're saying, Elwin, or I hear what you're saying. I see what you're saying. On the other hand, you know, this is a issue-oriented talk show, and we will entertain anybody who calls in. I don't, however, give out any kind of prophylactic that would guard anyone against the sarcasm, which is part and parcel of the delivery of this show, and for good reason. And the good reason is that the sarcasm is a way of sending the message that just because someone in government tells you that something has to be done a certain way or can't be done in a certain way, you don't necessarily have to swallow it. And we toss around another A word quite frequently, accountability, but there are very few people who really want to advance towards accountability. And I guess that would lead me into my final topic for today, which I'm not going to have a chance to finish, but I could at least start on it. And that's a story that appeared in yesterday's Daily News. On the card, it's listed as Bob versus the CLTC. And the story says, retired judge should temporarily run the land trust, restore public faith. And there's a story about Monday night's public hearing before the legislature. The story ran in, let's see, it was a Wednesday's online edition. It didn't make the hard copy, but it's still on the online edition if you want to go take a look at it. And I submitted my usual sarcastic testimony, which reads, Honorable Chairman Frank Bloss Jr. and members of the Committee on Guam, U.S. Military Buildup, etc., I appear before this honorable committee to lend my wholehearted support to Bills 283 and 284. Now, I've read that testimony before, so I won't go through the whole thing, but the testimony I gave on Monday night says the label of the paper attached here too reads in pertinent part, I appear before you today to testify in favor of Bills 283, 284, and 304-34. Today was July 13, because Senator Tom Addis summarily canceled the hearing set for 4 p.m. on that date in favor of a session that never happened and didn't reschedule that hearing. This testimony was quite effectively squelched until today. As I read that testimony today, I ask that you remember the temporal disconnect caused by Addis' failure to reschedule the hearing. While I will read my July 13 testimony into the record today, 2 sentences from that testimony must be excised and set forth herein. First, only the most naive among us must proceed on the basis that the same people who created, abated, benefited from, or ignored the scandal can be trusted to bring it to an end. And I'll finish this up tomorrow. We're out of time. Adios, Estagupa.